Hi, I'm Kelly and welcome to Kapowski Reads, and it is TBR time. I had a different plan for this week's video, but things have not gone quite as planned, so I'm just doing my TBR a couple of days earlier than I had intended to. And this is my favourite kind of video to make. I love playing my TBR game. If you are new, hello. I will pop a link in the description to the first time I played with my TBR board, but the game, it's pretty easy to follow. I just roll a dice, move a little cat, pick a card and pick a book accordingly. Sometimes the dice is kind to me and sometimes it's very much not. And the way that this month has been going, I don't know. I'm expecting to roll all ones or something like that. But let's see how I got on with my rolls from January, because I realised last year that I was playing the game, I was living my best life, but I was never letting you know if I'd read them. So I'm gonna start doing that. So I'm just gonna go through the rolls from January, whether I've read them or not. Then I'm gonna get on to February's reading intended books. For January, I was really lucky and I had 4 books on my TBR. The first one was a book that has a TV or film adaptation, and I went with Poor Things by Alistair Gray. I have made a reading vlog review about this book. I absolutely loved it, and I don't know, it might be my book of January. So far it is, but there's still a few days left, and I don't know, I might have a late contender for the imaginary crown, but we shall see. I really had a good time with this book. It was weird, so strange, but exactly the kind of odd, bizarre writing that I have come to love from this author. So ding ding, success. I then had a prompt that was to pick a book with an A or the at the beginning. So The Mystery of the Blue Train by Agatha Christie. This was a reread and I still really enjoyed it, and I still, even though I read it before and I knew what was coming, I still I didn't see it. I knew who it was all throughout, but I still didn't see it. So this was a very enjoyable reread for me. I still like it. I then had to pick a book title that begins with the last letter of the last pick. So train ends with an N, and I went with Nightwood by Juna Barnes. And I haven't read this book. I was going to say I didn't read it. There's still time. There's still a good few days left of the month. And the book is rather short, 153 pages. I think I can get through this before the end of the month. I will let you know if I don't, but I've got confidence. And my final pick was a book that was under 250 pages. I went with the poetry collection, Darling by Jackie Kay. This was a very emotional collection of poetry and I really enjoyed it, despite not really being a person who reads a lot of poetry. I used to. In my teenage years, I used to read a lot of poetry, but it's something that I'm trying to get back into because I did used to really enjoy it. So something's just falling behind me. So on to February's rolls. This is my February TBR game. Roll number 1. 13. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Green. A hardback. Roll number 1 was a green prompt, which was a hardback book. And I'm going with The Winter Garden by Alexandra Bell. This is a bit of a chunky book. I think it's 500 or so pages. And this has been on my TBR a few times and I've never gotten to it. And I really want to read it during winter, and winter ends in February. So I kind of need to get a shimmy on. So I I misunderstood what this book was about. I have been thinking for ages and ages that this book was a kind of like Caraval sort of book where there's like a contest with a time limit and then when it's done it just disappears. And it kind of is, but it kind of isn't. The book starts with our main character Beatrice getting to go to a winter garden, and she lives her best life there and is exposed to all of this magical sort of flora and fauna, and then the garden disappears. Some time passes and Beatrice then receives an invitation to compete at this garden to create a winter garden, and the prize for the winner is a life-changing wish. But from the back of the book it does say they will be required to give up the most wondrous part of their garden. In return, the prize will be one wish from the last of the winter garden's magic. So I'm very intrigued. I think there's maybe going to be some sort of twist in the tale, but also the cover is absolutely stunning. I'm very, very excited about this. I've been hoping to read this. I was just checking if there's anything under it. I've been hoping to read this one for a while and I just never got to it. So first on the list, rule number 2, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Blue. An ebook. Rule number 2 was a blue prompt, which was an ebook, which is kind of perfect because I am trying to read one book from my Kindle every month, and I'm going to put on my list City of Brass by S.A. Chakraborty. I don't 100% remember what this book is about other than a woman follows somebody and ends up in a world. There might be genies? Magic? Vague plot if ever there was one. I've forgotten. It's so long since I got this book that I've forgotten really what this book is about. I just know that I read a book by this author last year, The Amazing Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi? The Excellent Adventures of? Again, I don't remember, but I know I loved it and I love the author's writing and I want to read more books by her. So on the list it goes, and I will learn what the book is about instead of just making it up. Rule number 3, 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. A TBR vet. That's probably the last rule. We will see. Rule number 4, 5. Yeah, last one. Ooh, a short one this month. Rule number 3 was a pink prompt, and this was a TBR vet. So for that, I decided to go with any book that has been on my TBR since 2020 back. Because 2020 was when I started properly using Goodreads. And so when I went to go and see when I started putting books on my TBR, most of them were put on in 2020. There wasn't really anything I'd added prior to that other than like a tiny handful of books. So that was my logic. And I did an Instagram poll for this because this was my last rule. The game, unlike the rest of the month, the game was extremely kind to me. I think it knew I needed a break. So I popped an Instagram poll up and I put 4 of my TBR vets that I'm the most excited about reading on there. And there was still a little bit of time left from that poll before it expired. But at the time of filming, the winner was The Way of All Flesh by Ambrose Parry. This book is set again in Victorian times. We have a medical student and a doctor's maid who find themselves caught up in Edinburgh's seedy underbelly when bodies start appearing across the old town. They have to work together to find out who's been doing these gruesome, awful deeds. And this book came to me highly recommended. I have wanted to read it for a few years, but I never had a copy of it until Recently in December, my friend Sai gave me this because they were having a clear out of books, and I was like, ah, well, your tidying is, you know, helping me, so I now have a copy and I feel I have no excuse. I'm very interested because I know that Ambrose Parry is a couple, a married couple, and I know I've read from one of the pairing before, and I'm fairly certain, if memory serves correctly anyway, which I might not, I've DNF'd him. I believe I've read one book by him, really, wanted to love it, but there were a few things that made me kind of not. And then I DNF'd another book by him. So I'm intrigued to see how I get on when it's a joint venture. So that's very interesting. That's interesting to me, possibly not interesting to anybody else. But that is my game. 3 books. Well, you know I'm not going to end with 3 because I have some reading goals that I want to achieve over the year, and I haven't really got any of the books from my goals onto my TBR. So let's remedy that. So reading goals. I have some reading goals, don't we all? And I want to let you know what I'm planning to read for those. For Crush Your Kindle, reading 1 Kindle book a month. I've got City of Brass. For Read Christie, we are currently doing, anybody who's doing it, which is anybody who wants to, it's set by publication year. So January, February, March are books that came out in the 1920s. I am going to be reading The Mysterious Affair at Styles, which came out in 1921, and I have a gorgeous hardback edition, which I haven't read yet. With hindsight, I could have chosen this for my hardback book, but I didn't because I wanted to pick The Winter Garden. This is going to be a reread. I don't remember when I last read it, but there are very few Agatha Christie books that I have not read so far. That's what happens when you're a library kid and your library has a lot of Agatha Christie books. You make your way through them. For Kayla's buzzword, the buzzword is happy, positive words. And I'm going with Gorgeous Gruesome Faces by Linda Cheng. This is a NetGalley book that I meant to read last year and I didn't. This is a sapphic supernatural thriller. It is a sort of murdery mystery kind of book set among a K-pop environment. I think it sounds fantastic. I don't know a huge deal about K-pop other than the bands seem to have really fun dance routines and nice outfits and are very popular. But yeah, I love a wee thriller. For the diverse baseline, there are 3 prompts this month, just as last month. And some of these prompts tie into my reading 24 countries in 2024 goals. So that's all nice. The first prompt was to read a book by a Black author, Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This book is set in Nigeria during a time of military occupation, and there are 2 young students in love. One of them moves to the United States for further education, and their romantic partner is unable to join them due to the political climate at the time. And that results in him going to the United Kingdom and living as an undocumented person. And they later become reunited back in Nigeria. And I'm really interested in this book. This is a book that I got from the Greta Gerwig's favourite books. She's my favourite director. I will never stop talking about how much I love Frances Ha, but she recommended this book and I want to read it. I think it's going to be quite difficult reading, but I also think it's going to be a fantastic read. The next prompt was for historical fiction. I have got Violetta by Isabel Allende. This book is set in Chile and it surrounds a woman who is turning 100 years old and the various events that she has been through in her very, very long life. So anything from heartbreaks to affairs, poverty, wealth, terrible, terrible heartbreaking events and overwhelming joy. It's quite a short book for 100 years of life, but I've read a few books that kind of follow this kind of plot of following an older person as they reminisce over their lives, and I've always enjoyed them. So I'm going in with high expectations about this. And the last book on this list, which is the second last book I'm popping on my TBR, is a found family trope. If you know like a handful of things about my reading tastes, you'll know I like a weird book, I like a Scottish book, I like a strong female lead, and I love a found family. So excited about this. This is a book that I put aside and have been wanting to read since I bought it. Undead Girl Gang by Lily Anderson. This book is also a really nice floppy paperback. The joys just keep coming. So in this book, we've got some mean girls who die in some mysterious circumstances. And it feels like nobody seems to really care what happened to them. So our protagonists use some magic to bring them back, and they can bring them back for 7 days. During that time, the victims, they need to find out who killed them. They've got some unfinished business that needs taken care of. And I think I'm gonna love this. I'm getting 5-star vibes from this based on one review on the back from Bustle. And I think do I trust Bustle? I don't know. Let's say I do, because this review says, a YA mashup of The Craft and Veronica Mars with a Latina protagonist, the best mix of 90s girl power culture, compelling magic and creepy circumstances, all rolled together for the best kind of murder mystery. You tell me I'm not gonna love it. I'll call you a liar, because I won't. But I feel I'm gonna love this, and I'm excited. And I have one last book that is going on my TBR for no reason other than it comes out in February and I've been putting it off to read in February, so I have to. It is called Fathom Folk by Eliza Chan. This is a fantasy book surrounding an uprising, a revolution, and I remember there are not human, that are humans. There are those who sort of dwell in the sea, like sirens, merfolk, and they're fighting with the humans. And I'm just gonna say humans have probably done something wrong, because we can't be trusted. I've been putting this book off, ready to read it just before it comes out, and the time is now. The time is now. I'm going to read it, and I'm so excited. I've got a really nice varied TBR for February, and I'm really excited about each and every one of these books. Plus I have some ebooks too, and I realised that I have increased my TBR from 3 with my game right up to 9 if you add all my ebooks. But I mean, what are you gonna do? Let me know what you're planning to read in February, and if you've read any of these books and enjoyed them, let me know. Even if you've not enjoyed them, I'm nosy. I like to know these things. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!